What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and we have a lot of games coming up Saturday, Sunday, all these different things. But I haven't done a good old-fashioned recap video in a bit, and there's been some theatrics going on. So I sometimes like to just go to ESPN's page here, just to show how they put things in people's face. So if you didn't see this game, then you missed a spectacle, of course, and again, at this point, I genuinely feel bad for not Browns fans. I'm just used to their team being a disappointment. For Pistons fans, it's pretty rough. I mean, obviously, the odds of a team this bad somehow hanging enough just to go to overtime and then blow the lead. They were up by like 20. Yeah, here we go. They're up by 21 points, 19 points. I think they were up by 21 at some point, and they found a way to blow it, of course. And again, I brought this up sarcastically, but like to the gematria people, it's it's not that I don't believe in gematria, but I look more for the downright symbolism. So I find it incredibly interesting that the final score is 128 to 122 on 12:28, with the Pistons at 2 and 28. It was just riddled throughout the game. I think it went to overtime when it was tied at 108. They were the last second. The last play was with 8 seconds left. There was a bunch of or last shot off, I should say, was with 8 seconds. It was pretty ridiculous. And these teams like scored in unison. So like the Celtics would miss, then the Pistons would miss. The Celtics would hit a three, then the Pistons would. And I've noticed that trend a lot with the NBA and just how they seem to script these games. The one good thing is, for the most people out there, and I brought this up because I do, gosh, we cover 10 to 15 plays a day, at least, on the Patreon. I've been covering just basically my entire system because I understand on YouTube not a lot of people care about watching high points in college and all these different games, but we just play the metrics and they usually wind up coming through. Like today, the Pacers under, games like that. We got the I'll go into the Browns in a second. I put that one on YouTube, but I had mentioned, I think on YouTube even, and on that video on Patreon, my Discord, for the people smarter than me and more disciplined than me, the reason I thought this was a great pick, and I'll stand by it, is at any point in halftime, if anyone again that's smarter and more disciplined than me decided I'm going to hedge this game, then you're looking at a guaranteed like plus 500. The Pistons were actually pretty decent favorites even though they suck. I think they were at like plus 150 or plus 180 at some point. So I'm sorry, minus 150, minus 180. The Celtics were the ones that had the plus. And then, even as stupid as I am, once it was the fourth quarter and it was even odds for like that small window, I was able to hedge the Pistons a little bit. So anyone that hedged did really good on this game. So that's another reason I don't mind playing heavy underdogs, because you can get decent hedge value, but the games just have to be perfect. But I'm not going to take credit. I said the Pistons were going to win. They didn't, so I'm not going to act like it was a win. But it's just interesting. Of course, ESPN's immediately out there with the story. Now, another interesting story, and I brought this up in my NFL, and here a freaking Pop-Tart, a strudel over here is the logo. They actually have a Pop-Tart sticking out of the trophy. So, you could tell that they're really focusing as much, if not more, on the entertainment aspect than the sports aspect, but that's fine. Now, this is something that's very, very interesting because somebody mentioned this in a playoff prediction video. Just a couple days ago, I had mentioned how it seemed like a foregone conclusion that Flacco is going to pound the Jets. So we were able to get that. We missed the under, but as I went into, the cover was my favorite play, setting them up for the playoffs. They were going to make it anyway. There's no reason to have the Browns not look strong. And I mentioned it'd be funny if he played his former team. And sure enough, we have a tweet out here from Mason, and ESPN just happened to see it. Of all the tweets, they saw that tweet and said, "Oh, imagine if it plays out this way," as if they have no hand in how these games play out. So I find that all very interesting, and I feel like the stage has definitely been set for Browns versus the Ravens. And speaking of the Browns, again, a very interesting game. Easy cover. Obviously, the over, I don't think anyone expected 57 points. I typically would have liked the over because these teams don't score. But when it's set in the low 30s, I just feel like the public's going to be more on the the over. So I thought, okay, taking the under. But the Browns are the bigger play, so we got that. And our rankings video, or our playoff seeding video, is looking pretty accurate, I would say. We did it. I did a few of them, but I mean, the most recent was the beginning of last week. And had the Niners not getting a first seed, had them losing to the Ravens. So it's looking like a lot of things are setting up. Now, what's really interesting is we just had Detroit get humiliated once again. And again, at this point, they are just basically telling Detroit fans, we don't care about you, pick another sport, whatever the case may be. They're just trolling the fans. I mean, they're going to win when people least expect it. That's why I thought the Celtics made sense. But they'll pull a win out of the blue and probably lose a bunch of other games. What's funny is they actually had a winning record to start the year at 2-1. But either way, the reason I find it interesting, and I just noticed this a few minutes ago, because as I said, I'm always doing different types of videos for college, for the memberships, trying to cover every single metric. And I don't like to overlook the obvious storylines. Another thing I had wanted to earlier this year is they're really pushing how the Lions are just setting all sorts of records. And I had gone into, I can't think of the last time somebody could, someone knows, that the Lions and Browns both made the playoffs. And here they are playing back-to-back games after the Pistons just got humiliated. To me, I was going to listen to the talking heads. I listened to them for like a minute. But I thought, after thinking about it, I really think it just makes sense. The odds of both of these teams not only making the playoffs, but we have a legitimate chance of Detroit, the Lions, of course, and not the Pistons. They might as well, as the fans say, sell the team, being the number one seed coming out of the NFC. I don't think that Niners loss was a coincidence. So I know a lot of people are looking at this Cowboys game and thinking, well, Cowboys win makes perfect sense because then they're basically tied with the Eagles, yada yada. But to me, it makes much more sense that the Lions would win this game, and then they're flirting with unseating the San Francisco 49ers. And that definitely could happen. And of course, the headlines would be, the Lions, they're probably going to win their first playoff game before the Pistons win. They've been running with that narrative for a while too. A couple people on my Discord brought that up. And then you have the fact that, again, to have the same city have just the most embarrassing team, and then arguably the best team by record in the NFC, both repping their city, I think is very, very fitting. So, for all those reasons, after thinking about it for a little bit, I do like the Lions to win this game. You can see that the Cowboys have a home game winning streak of their own. Interesting, it's a 15-game home. Again, these things I just noticed very quickly. Just imagine and I don't mean to insult the Gematria Goons, it's just the people that come on and they're like, oh yeah, you should have known this, because the prime ordinal of Dallas is 49, and they played the 49ers, 15 times, and the 49ers and the Lions are 59 kilometers apart, all these different things. It's just ridiculous. But what I'll say is, it is interesting that the Cowboys are 10-5, and obviously they could stay on the 1-5 home game winning streak. So for a few different reasons, I love the Lions here to win this game. They're getting 2-1 odds, very akin to the 49ers versus the Ravens. I wanted to get this out on YouTube because, like I said, we have holidays coming up, obviously. It's been busy. I've been busy in the middle of Christmas and New Year's trying to, first and foremost, get everything out for, all the members, but then also dealing with behind-the-scenes issues of the channel, and then also trying to make sure we don't miss any sports. We have bowl games coming up I'll make sure we cover Georgia, Florida State, all the big ones. Alabama is going to be a big one. But as far as this game, I wanted to get it out now just in case I was not able to. You know, or even if I was able to get it out, I don't want to get it out where it's like the day of the game. So I figured I would do this while I was doing our nightly recap. Like I said, I don't do the recaps every night anymore just because there's so many videos I'm doing on different platforms. I'm trying to just cover who I like and why I like them. I feel like that's the meat of the matter. But looking at this, it's very interesting, especially after that Pistons humiliation. I think it makes perfect sense here for the Lions to win this game. Get teased them with the Niners. I'm not saying they're gonna take the number one pick in the or the number one seed, but I think it's a much better story. If the Cowboys win, sure, it makes it all very interesting, and you have all these teams in the thick of it. But I like the Lions to win this game, and it further establishes them. It's kind of like the Ravens, where people, I don't think, believe in them quite enough, but they believe in them enough. But Dallas at home here, I feel like people are going to be all over that. Now, they could keep the home undefeated streak alive going into the playoffs. It would make it a little more interesting. But again, I just think it's too good to pass up on. Once the Lions win this game, they're going to run with all these stories. You know, freaking Lions in football have 6 times more wins than the Pistons. You can already see that the headlines that they would run with, in my opinion, as if the Lions are able to win here. And then again, we do have a chance. They actually had this on ESPN too. It was like, oh, the Browns can still get the number one seed if the Ravens lose out and the Browns win out. So Browns and Lions, as much of a laughingstock as the Jets are, the Raiders are, there's a lot of laughingstocks. You know, the Bears, although they're looking pretty good ever since CM Punk returned. In the NBA, you have your laughingstocks, of course, but there's no bigger laughingstock than the Browns and the Lions. These two teams have just been humiliated ever since. Well, the Browns, I guess Otto Graham was our last, time that they were winning. And then with the Lions, even with Barry Sanders, they weren't winning. So, and he's coming to the limelight again. He's talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's weighing in on the Hall of Fame conversation. Or not Hall of Fame, I'm sorry, MVP conversation. So yeah, I think everything combined, it makes perfect sense here for the Lions to win this game. I'm curious what you guys think. I still have in my projections the Eagles finishing with the number one seed. I think they might edge out the Lions. But again, even the Lions getting a 2 seed, beating out the Niners, would get money off the Niners in my opinion, because then they have to possibly play some road games. They have to play one more game. And Purdy might be quote banged up, something else we predicted. I think a lot of these dominoes are falling into place. So yeah, I like the Lions here to win the game outright. I think it's just going to be a straight up win. And I would definitely take the over in this game as well. Again, just like the Browns, I like the game more, so I like the win more than I like the over-under, but I think it's set pretty high, even for teams that are pretty high-scoring teams. Dallas is known for having a pretty stifling defense, so I feel like anything over 50, public might be more inclined to take the under. So I like the over in the game, but more importantly, I think the Lions are going to win the game. And if you could just think of the stories that they're setting up, it's pretty outrageous. And if you don't believe me, this is something else we covered. I went into this a few times. Every year, it just seems like they wait longer and longer to eliminate teams from the playoffs. I mean, you can't make this up. Look at the AFC South. Like, you couldn't get this if you have to have scripted something to get it this ridiculous. And then you see Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, same deal. You see Las Vegas and Denver, same deal. What's funny is before the season, while again this prediction might not come true, we had the Chiefs missing the playoffs, and they're probably going to make it by like one game. Like, it looks like they might clinch the last game of the season. And even that's an interesting script, because I went into this before. Why yank Russell when if the Chiefs lose this week and you win, you are literally a win away from getting into the playoffs? He's playing good. I know a lot of people are telling me the Raiders are going to make a little run and sneak in ahead of the Chiefs. What's funny is, again, my preseason pick was the Raiders to win the division, but then it seemed like they were just completely giving up on them. So I'm going to stick by that. If a team is to out the Chiefs, I think it's going to be the Broncos. Then you come down to the NFC South and look at this. I mean, again, you just can't make this up. Look at the Vikings and Packers. Look at the Rams and Seahawks. Like, it's just absolutely absurd. It's just like they pick a complete basement dweller, and then they make it where every other team is just right there, where it's going to come down to basically. So after this week, we're going to have probably not even half of these teams eliminated. We're probably still going to have 3/4 of them remaining going into the final week. And I just don't think that could be a coincidence. So again, in my video, I do have the Texans getting in over the Colts. I think they're going to get in. I just think there's too much love around CJ right now. I think the Bills are going to eke in. Not as much on the Steelers, although I think Tomlin's going to have his winning record. And then on the NFC side, I think it's going to be the Rams. I went into this a few times as well. So if you could pick between the Rams or Seahawks, I definitely think it's going to be the Rams. Look at the NFC South. I'd bet dollars to donuts that it's going to be evened up at the end of this week. Just have Saints winning just makes sense. So I'm going to go into all the games, of course. I still like the Falcons, believe it or not. I think they're being quiet about them. I think they do make some sense to sneak in, even though they're considered a shitty team. Bucks are kind of a draw, but I just feel like not enough of a draw. Maybe all 3 Florida teams get in. That would be pretty interesting. But I just wanted to more cover how ridiculous these standings are, how every team in these divisions have basically completely even records, and then the teams. And I went into this again with the Lions. I said, it makes more sense that they just run away with the division. I've held that stance from the beginning of the year, because now you have all these teams fighting for wild card spots. When they're all fighting for the division, only one of them gets it, obviously, and I just feel like in certain divisions it makes sense to keep it open. They've been doing that with the NFC South, the AFC South. But other ones I feel like runaways just make more sense. Niners, I know some people actually had the Seahawks winning the division. NFC North, was another one. And you had the Ravens here. Now, again, the Browns could make a run. I just don't see it happening. And same thing with the Bills. If they could win out, Dolphins lose out. But I'm pretty sure, because of the divisional record, I don't know the record against each other, but I'm pretty sure the Dolphins, it would require a lot for them not to win the division. So anyway, it's looking more and more like we might get like I said, the Ravens just continuing, doing like the Eagles did last year, take the first seed. And I do think we'll probably get, it's looking like, again, Kansas City to miss the playoffs would be pretty ridiculous. I'd love to stand by my preseason prediction and say they're going to miss out, but I think they're going to get in by like one game, maybe eke out of the first round, and then wind up playing Miami. I think that just stands them to the most reason. I can't see Miami not playing Kansas City. And then again, Baltimore, Cleveland. A lot of these just seem to write themselves. So we'll have to see what happens. I'll be going into, as I said multiple times, I'll do a exact play once we have our playoff seedings. Of course, depending how much they differ from the one my prediction a week ago. I'll go into exactly who I think is going to win. But I think a lot of these storylines write themselves. And yeah, it should be interesting to listen to them talk about the Pistons and the Celtics, because that was interesting. And as I'm looking at this, I just found a near impossible palindrome. 1141055104111. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a coincidence, but I just don't think you can do these things on accident. It's not like I'm like a lot of these people who spend hours and hours trying to find exact numbers to fit my sequences. As I'm scrolling through this, I'm just seeing ridiculous number sequences that just don't make sense, that you almost have to script. So, yeah, the Souths, basically mirroring each other is very interesting. And I think a lot of people are starting to really just wake up to the fact that at the very least, there is a lot of choreography going on in these games. They're set up for a reason. There's a reason these certain teams play the last week of the season. Certain guys come out of nowhere, like Joe Flacco at the last minute, and they have all these stories that just wind up having payoffs. So yeah, I didn't want to make it too long-winded. I just kind of wanted to do a recap of our, again, the only picks I really went into in our last video was the Pistons, who almost got it done, but unfortunately almost is no cigar. Uh, Unless, like I said, you were able to get the hedge, which most people were able to. It's a matter of if you're a degenerate like me and didn't get the optimal hedge potential, or if you were smart and said, you know what, I'm just gonna take free money, like I should have at halftime would have been the perfect time. So yeah, good day. Browns came through. We've been doing good on the, for the most part, last couple weeks in the NFL, and I think it's because, again, I just use wrestling logic. I feel like a lot of it is booked like the road to WrestleMania, which, by the way, is happening right now. You got the Royal Rumble going on, and then we got WrestleMania happening. I swear wrestling and football emulate each other. More so football bites from wrestling. That's just what I think happens. But yeah, you can let me know what you think. If you think the Pistons overtime game was on the up and up, or if that should have been a complete prison pounding, because it should have been. Just a matter of how ridiculous the scoring was. Just one team goes on a 12-0 run and one fouls just to get the teams back into it. Teams switching up pace, shooting. The Celtics kept the Pistons in it by shooting a bunch of dumb threes. Like, it was ridiculous all around. But at the end of the day, like I said, I still think the value is good for the Pistons, and the Browns are the ones who really came through. But what prompted me to really want to do this video is when I saw the article that, well, again, the ESPN immediately putting out, oh, the Pistons almost coming back, but they lost. And yeah, it just happened to be 120, what was it, 128 to 122, and the Pistons are 2-28, and it's on 12-28. Like, people will tell me, oh, that's not gematria. I don't care what it is. To me, it's way more revealing than gematria could ever be, because it's right in your face, and you don't need to go online and like find a calculator to find numbers that fit our sequence. Like, they're right here in our face. Whether it's this palindrome we have in the NFC East, all these identical records in the AFC South, NFC South, or tonight with the Pistons, where it was just very blatant. We saw 2-8 everywhere. I think Cade finished with 28 points. He might have finished with 30. I think he might have made a shot at the buzzer. I can't quite remember. But either way, it's just pretty ridiculous, all the 2-8s that were in that game. But yeah, I'm more sold. I've been sold on the Lions again since the beginning of the year. Vegas gives away a lot of information. They had Detroit as minus odds to make the playoffs. And yeah, now you could say, oh, it's obvious. It was not obvious coming into the year. The Vikings were coming off a very good year. They lost barely any of their players. The Lions didn't really add anybody. And Vegas was telling us that the Lions were slight favorites. It was like minus 150 to like it was like 100 to 150. But they still had the Lions as favorites to win the division. And they had them as minus odds to make the playoffs. So the minute I saw that, I was like, okay, they're going to push this team like they're this super team out of nowhere. And now, especially with the Pistons being so embarrassingly bad, I just think there's really no other story except Detroit wins. As you can see, them in the Niners are the only teams that have officially clinched their divisions, and the Lions have clinched by the most games. So again, I know a lot of people think Cowboys winning makes sense, because then you would have them and the Eagles possibly knotted up, and they're all one game behind the Niners. That would be like a four-way race, and that's definitely possible. I could see that narrative where it's like, oh, we got a four-way race going into the last week. But I think what also makes a lot of sense and more sense is, for the first time ever, both the Lions and Browns, get top seeds. Or the Browns probably won't do it, but it's going to be their first time in the playoffs, and probably the first time, I think, ever that the Lions would get a number one seed. So I'm not saying they're definitely going to do it, but I do think that they're going to be flirted with it. I think they're going to have, as they say, a good chance of controlling their own destiny. Not to mention the 15-game winning streak, all these different things. I think the Cowboys stay on, like I said, that 15 game, and it drops, and they uh, they lose because they do like to push the streaks, but at the same time, I think in this case it's going to be a lot of money on Dallas. They are coming off a couple losses, but at home they're treated differently. You can see they're 7-0 this year, so Detroit won in Kansas City. They kind of had that narrative going for them. So yeah, I wanted to cover Detroit before in case I was not able to cover it on because of I have a couple other videos that I wanted to get out, and I more so just wanted to cover tonight's games, and in covering them very quickly, just looking through the articles, became more optimistic on the Lions to win on Saturday. So we have that pick out now. That way, probably tomorrow or the next day, I always do, and I don't. It's not to plug it. It's just because I genuinely do appreciate everybody that has signed up for the Patreon. That's why I've tried to get our football videos out like every Wednesday there, just for like an early access. It just this week was absolutely crazy between obviously Christmas and all the different sports I'm trying to cover. So I'll be covering basically all of them at the same time. I'll have all the Sunday games out in ample time. But I figured I'd get the set, even though there's only one of them. The line could move a little bit. It can move to like 4 points, which, if you're picking the money line, it's a pretty big jump, especially with the juice. So I'm going to take the Lions here to win this game outright. I do like the over. You could always do a mini parlay, but I'm not a fan of parlays. I like the just straight up picks. And we had a favorite win at home. So maybe for this next primetime game, we have a underdog win on the road. But it's just seeing a lot of interesting commonalities with the Lions, the Pistons, and yes, the Browns. The Browns are, again, just a trash team. And for them and the Lions to both be two of the most impressive teams coming out of their respective conferences, I think is a big enough story. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think, if they're definitely going to set up the Browns and Ravens. Some other matchups that you might like if you want to let me know. I also thought about it, and watching the game, I remembered, oh yeah, it's not just Flacco, but Kareem Hunt is also a former Jet. He's also a former Chief. So there's so many matchups, and I get that's going to happen by virtue of default. But to me, it's just being pushed too much. They're pushing it like wrestling, where it's like, oh man, this guy super kicked this dude a week ago. He's going to have hell to pay next Monday. That's basically what they're doing here with the NFL and the NBA, in my opinion. So, yeah, I just wanted to cover the Lions. While I'm at it, I said it with the Pistons, and again, I wasn't right, but as far as profit, I'm proud of the fact that I would say most people probably did profit on that pick. Tomorrow, I love the Hawks. I don't understand. I'm sure there's some injuries, but I don't understand how it's a pick 'em when they're clearly a shitty team playing the Kings. So if you were looking just for like one game that you're like, oh, I really need this game, I want to add a game to my parlay, I want to quote lock, I would say for tomorrow in the NBA, take Atlanta. I think they're definitely going to win the game. I don't think that spread makes any sense at all. And typically when we pick just based off of traps, not to mention the Hawks suck against the spread, it usually winds up working out well. So I think we'll get that as well. So I figured I'd get a couple picks in here, just so people have a couple plays. Like I said, the Hawks is tomorrow, obviously. The Lions is the next day. And then I'm going to have our football slate out. We have a big one, obviously. A bunch of really interesting games with almost every one of these games has playoff ramifications, or at least half of them. Almost all of them. The Bears are still in the playoffs, believe it or not. So, really interesting. We just had the Ravens play the Niners, and they were like, oh, this is the first time that two teams have been this far into the year fighting for the best record. And we just happen to have it where we might get it 2 weeks in a row now, because obviously the Dolphins are tied for the best record along with the Ravens. So another interesting, storyline that it seems like they're force feeding us. I think they're probably going to run that same narrative again, because they did with the Niners. They said, oh, they'd never been in week 16 with two teams battling for the best record. And now we're in week 17 and we're getting the exact same thing with the exact same team with the Ravens. So a lot of it, in my opinion, is just very, very choreographed and very, not even cryptically coded. They kind of just put it in our face. So yeah, I didn't want to take too long, but I haven't done a good old-fashioned recap video in a while. And since we had a pretty good night, like I said, Pistons winning would have obviously been just icing on the cake. But I'll definitely take, like I said, the hedge was nice. I was able to get a small one. And for anyone that got it. And our big play was the Browns, which was nice. Obviously, the Lions will be nicer because they're getting 2-1, so hopefully we get that. Hawks are a pick'em tomorrow, like I said. Makes no sense in my opinion, so I would definitely load up on the Hawks. So again, thank you for everybody. If you don't know, and again, the reason I've been pretty busy is because finally, again, the YouTube gods have deemed our channel worthy of not being shut down, it seems like, and they have approved us. So as far as monetization and things of that nature, it's looking okay. So that was the whole reason I made the membership sites to begin with, was because I thought it was an impossibility we were going to get through the firewall of YouTube, but it seems like we're all right. I don't want to jinx us, but I wanted to thank everybody for that, because if you don't know, just watch my first ever video on this channel. It explains it all in great detail without me having to say any trigger words. You'd be surprised how many trigger words will mess with the channel. But I put that video out, and if you watch our first several videos, you'll see it took a lot of grinding, a lot of videos, and a lot of people that literally, to this day, when I look, like when it shows me my analytics and how people are watching the channel, a good 50% of them are people that are searching national sports entertainment. So I genuinely appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. It means everything. We were able to beat the YouTube machine twice because of that, because there's just no way we would have got the traction we have without the just by being recommended or anything like that, because that's just not happening. Hasn't happened. It's people literally that searched for the channel after they were curious what happened last time, like where'd you go, what happened. And we started this one up, like I said, it was like right after Christmas, because that was when we got Thanos snapped the first time. And people literally searching the name, people that are in the Discord that showed love, all the positive comments, all the people that helped out on Patreon and still do, that I just genuinely appreciate it. It makes it where I can do this. I do have fun doing it, but it can be a real headache dealing with, gosh, like I said, there's like 50,000 steps I'm still in the process of completing just for the monetization process, now that I was officially approved, which is a step further than what happened last time, where they just shut us down on Christmas. But yeah, I think that we're finally through the most of it. So between New Year's, Christmas, and trying to deal with that, I haven't been able to get a bunch of videos out. So what I've been trying to do is cover just kind of what's on my mind in one video. So like in this video, I wanted to cover on what I think is going to happen for the playoffs still, which not much has changed. Like I said, you can watch that video if you hadn't seen it. The Lions, which I think makes a lot of sense, especially after seeing what happened with the Pistons. I wanted to go into that spectacle of a game, because that was a spectacle. Just the fact that it just happened to get to overtime, the runs, the back and forths, and just teasing those poor Pistons fans long enough to want to take those paper bags off for a split second, only to sew them back on their head for good. And I genuinely feel bad for the fans, because these people go to these games, they root for these guys, these nitwits that don't care about them, that are purposely throwing games. They can't even hold a straight face in their press conferences afterwards. ESPN's trolling them online afterwards. It's pretty sad to watch, and pretty sad that Disney would do that to a fan base, but we know how Disney is. I mean, they've destroyed basically every good franchise in cinema for the sake of trolling people or social commentary. So I definitely don't put shaming Pistons fans beyond them or beyond their moral compass. So yeah, I didn't want to go on a tangent, but I wanted to go into a lock that I think for is the NBA tomorrow, which is the Hawks. I didn't want to forget that. Wanted to cover the Browns game, which we did good on. Wanted to cover the Pistons game, which, again, very close. I get close but no cigar. But in the case of hedging, we definitely had I'd call it a win because it's in everyone's own hands once it's even odds and you got 10-1 pre-game. So, and I even mentioned that in my last video. I was like, if at any point it's 50-50, you got yourself a plus 500. So, one of the reasons I liked that pick, and I don't pick giant underdogs often, but when I do, I kind of have that in mind because it's all about extracting value. So yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think it's going to be the Cowboys make it really interesting? All these teams at 11-5, or do you think the Lions get it done so they can continue to troll Piston fans and point out how the Lions are going to clinch a playoff seed before, and at the same time the freaking Pistons are going to get eliminated in from the playoffs earlier than any team in the history of any sport because it's looking like that's what's going to happen. So yeah, I'll go into all these games. They're all going to be interesting. Again, some very suspicious spreads if you look at some of these games. I mean, look at this Jags game. I know they're not a great team, but 6 points, I just don't get some of these spreads. So I think we're going to do really good as far as that goes. And as far as the playoffs, we're looking pretty good. So, again, thank you to everyone who's just shown support from the beginning and continues to make it where we can do videos and just do what we enjoy. I thank everyone in the Discord, everyone that's signed up for the daily picks, on the Patreon, and everyone that still does, everyone that watches, everyone that comments. Obviously, even if you disagree with me and think I suck, I still appreciate anyone that's willing to give constructive criticism or their own insight as to why they think I might be wrong, right, or somewhere in between. At the end of the day, the whole purpose of this movement, and it's a movement now, you have multiple, if you watch OG Lightskins, he's like a shorts guy, and this guy's blowing up. He puts out shorts, they do millions of views, and the dude is just basically reiterating what we're talking about. In his videos, he shows offensive linemen purposely holding. He shows defensive backs purposely grabbing receivers, referees being ridiculous, quarterbacks missing open guys. They talks about the scripts, all these different things, and you have channels who are satirical, but now we're starting to see a lot of people that genuinely are just like rolling with it. They're like, yeah, this is scripted. This is not on the up and up, and I'm going to give my opinion on it. So, way less exploits than we had in the past, which is great. A lot of the exploits are being silenced one way or another. You have Jake the Nutbag, who's just kind of dying in stagnation. I'm sure he's going to... It's playoff time, so I'm sure he's got a nice poster of me on his wall with some kind of dartboard, and he's probably got a bunch of random insults out of a hat that he wants to pick out and throw at us. I'm sure we'll have another video about us coming out soon because it's high time. It's been a couple months and he hasn't stalked us, which is... I'm a little concerned when that happens because the dude was so obsessed with us that whenever he's not completely on our dick, just for lack of a better term, sometimes I worry about his mental health. Maybe he's getting a little sad, but at the end of the day, he's not the only one. There are so many. Just why I always say watch out, because again, it's not a coincidence we had to go through all these obstacles, and these complete nut jobs are just out there putting out maniacal videos, rants, just all sorts of things. And again, if you search my name, like this nut job's one of the top 3 results because he made videos with our name in it. So you can kind of see who gets recommended, and it's good to see a lot of people are slowly transitioning away from the drama channels who really don't give a shit about any of this. They just want to turn into a drama channel, and they're trying to use sports and such to do so. So we've dealt with a lot of, like I said, nut jobs, maniac, narcissist, and egomaniacs in general. A lot of them just hung it up. I think 2 channels that went after us are just gone now. They just quit. One guy, I'm not even kidding, I can't make this stuff up. He just turned into an Andrew Tate channel where he's giving guys advice on how to get girls.
I'm sure he's a complete chick magnet himself, and anyone that watches his channel is immediately going to start pulling dime pieces. But it's not just him. Pat the pedophile, and I'm not bringing these people up for no reason. I'm bringing them up because they did this playoff time last year was when they really came at us. Because what happens is playoff time is when people are clicking the most, so they get really sad and upset when they see other people doing pretty well, and we're doing better than we've been doing for a while analytically and as far as our predictions go. So sometimes I like to just prophylactically bring things up. So since I assume probably in the next 3 days, again, one of the nutbags is going to have a video about us, I figured I would nip it in the bud and just go into it because it's something I certainly expect. Like I said, the dude was on my comments less than a week ago commenting. The dude made like 5 different accounts, admittedly with his own name, and he'll come on my channel and just put like 15 comments about how he's great, and he never copied us. It was just unprompted a lot of times too, which is funny because, again, we have the screenshots to prove it, and it'll be like Jake plays slots, Jake mounts cows, Jake's not an addict, on all these different channels he makes and comes on here, and then just I'm dealing with it every single day with this guy. So if you see the guy, do whatever you want. I mean, I really don't care. But it is refreshing to see a lot of these shills are quietly dying in stagnation. They're doing a fraction of what they used to do. And the more genuine channels, and there's not just me. From what I noticed, Rig Sports Media seems to be pretty cool. He seems to just point out the obvious, and not even the obvious, but point out the in plain sight stuff, and he goes into good detail, and he doesn't do it in a condescending way. He doesn't insult people. He doesn't try and attack other channels. And like I said, there's OG Lightskins. There's more of like a shorts comic kind of channel, but he seems pretty cool. So I'm noticing a growth where the weeds are being dug up. These just complete snakes aren't getting the complete 100% monopoly that they want, and I think it's pissing them off. They'll probably transition into other like I said, 2 of them already. Pat the pedophile decided to do poker and then quit when nobody wanted to watch him play old people in poker. And the Andrew Tate guy, I don't even think he put out an Andrew Tate video. That guy's name was DeLeon Cruz, by the way. And those are pretty much like the 3 of them that have been just from the beginning. I'm talking 2 years in one way, shape, or form, just trying to give us grief. And it's a good victory to just see them, for the most part, being, like I said, tuned out by people that are just like, all right, you're not bringing anything to the table, and you're actually actively working against the movement, in my opinion, as controlled opposition. But I didn't want to go on a high horse tangent. I just wanted to cover that aspect because, like I said, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that other channels aren't going to talk about, and I get it. Not a lot of people want to hear about it, but I watch a lot of different. I don't watch this sector too much just because I do it, but I'll watch like movie reviews. I'll watch different channels, and I'm curious what goes on behind the scenes. So I try and explain and be transparent with people, let them know exactly what happens behind the scenes. Sometimes it's pretty ugly, but I appreciate every single person that has made it where there's been some sort of I don't want to say vindication, but definitely validation of just keep trudging forward, doing our thing, not letting these, again, nut jobs is the only way I can describe them. They definitely, there's not a therapist in the world that would take half these people for any amount of money, just because of the secondhand psychopathy that might rub off on them. So all the crap we've dealt with, it's definitely nice, especially right around Christmas too. Finally, I've broken through a lot of the YouTube issues and also getting all the love from the community, because that's what matters. Everyone in the community that is in the Discord that is genuinely wanting to bring truth to the community or just their insight. Like 96% of the people that watch the channel, I'm talking analytically, like it or just have something positive to say. It's a very, very low amount of people that aren't happy. And even if someone's not happy, for the most part, we just get nothing but love as far as like, I think you're missing this one. And it's nothing there's nothing wrong with people disagreeing. So the dialogue's always great. So I really wanted to just thank everybody that's helped in every capacity. And I also wanted to just go into what I think is going to happen tomorrow, what I think is going to happen for the playoffs. The ridiculous, again, the Pistons game was just outright ridiculous, but to everyone who hedged, good job. And the Browns game was a nice, easy, basically wire-to-wire cover, which was kind of what we expected with them already basically clinching a playoff berth. So, again, thank you to everybody. We're doing really well. I plan on some big things. There's an interview. I brought this up a while back, but it was when we got cut off at the knees. I'm going to be setting up. Last I spoke to him, he still wants to do it. Interview with Tim Donahue, and he said there are no questions that are off limits. So I want to make sure that's 100% sure before I pay the guy. Again, it's not like Tim Donahue is anyway a guy that, in my opinion, could have just ran rogue and did whatever he wanted. So I know a lot of people will dismiss what he says, but there's a reason everybody turned on him, and there's a reason he got blackballed. So I've been looking forward to talking to him for a while. And again, thanks to all the support and stuff. I should be able to pay the guy pretty soon and get a good 45 minutes of his time. I'll probably make it a live video. So if you want me to do that, that'd be cool. I'm not sure if he'd be all right with that. I don't see why he wouldn't if there's no questions that are off limits. But I think it'd be fun to do that as a live video. But either way, we'll be having him on soon. So hopefully it'll be sooner than, I'm hoping like within a month or two, but maybe even sooner than that. I didn't want to announce it until I was almost positive that it would be possible. And I wanted to make sure everything was good with the red tape here on YouTube before I mentioned it. So there'll be that coming out. I'll be doing a few other things, but I definitely plan on expanding and doing everything I can to at least just bring some different type of stuff that, as far as really opening people's eyes to the ins and outs of how these leagues are rigged. And I think Tim Donahue would be one hell of a start, especially with some of the stuff going on in the NBA and college. Again, he knows he reffed in both, so it's not like he doesn't know what's going on in college. But I'm sure the NBA is where people are going to be a little more interested. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. I think it'll be a fun interview. I've been looking forward to it. It just literally the last time we were about to set it off is when we had a bunch of issues, and like I said, dealing with nut jobs makes it a little more difficult. But for the most part, they've all been tuned out. For all I know, I don't know what the heck they're saying about me, but again, I more so wanted to prophylactically bring stuff up because these people come out like at the same exact time. They did it last year, playoff time. Every week there was something new that they were trying to, quote, expose me for, which always to no avail, because I would say we got to be the most transparent channel out there. We proudly, proclaim our losses here. We don't pretend we were right about something we were wrong about. We just do it all live. We don't need to edit. And I think that's why we're growing. So, again, I hope this doesn't come off like a soapbox speech here at the end, but I just like to keep people in the loop. And there's a lot of shills that I noticed that are not nearly as high and mighty as they once were. And it's good to see them getting hit with a little bit of karma, because at the end of the day, I do think hard work, being honest, being respectful, just doing your thing pays off a lot more than taking underhanded Weasley tactics, which in this case has been blowing up in everyone's face who's tried it against us. So yeah, to the few channels that I mentioned that I respect, keep doing your thing. From what I can tell, they're growing, they're doing well. They're not mocking people, they're not being condescending, they're not acting like they're the only people in the world that realize that it's sports entertainment and not competition. So I do appreciate those channels for just doing their thing. They make the sector a little less toxic and a little less of a cesspool. But yeah, I wanted to just kind of do a in-depth thing covering a lot of stuff, since I haven't done like a long video in a while. I haven't gone into a bunch of different narratives, so I figured I would just jumble them into one, long-winded video. And like I said, we'll have our football picks coming out soon. So take care and happy earnings.